We're with James Gore. He's the Sonoma County Supervisor for the 4th District, which he will tell you is probably the best district. I don't know, man.
It's gorgeous.
I'm from Petaluma. It's all good. It's all good. This is really interesting talking to you. We're approximately the same age, same generation, and we've seen a lot of change in Sonoma County, in our respective hometowns. Fairly dramatic change. Petaluma, Healdsburg. Let's talk about what Healdsburg was in the 80s and 90s and what it has become now.
Yeah.
And let me hedge that by saying I really like what it's become now. So what was it like growing up?
It's interesting. I was born in Healdsburg Hospital, Healdsburg District Hospital, and 1978, so I'm 38 years old. I was raised for my first 10 years in Cloverdale, in the mountains right near the Mendocino border. Cloverdale was in 3,200 people, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, real small town. Not a lot going on. Timber industry had kind of disappeared years before, spotted owl and other things had shut that down.
Right.
And so there wasn't really any economic development, but a cute small town.
And wine country hadn't hit big yet.
You know, it's funny you say that because my dad was, even before I was born, had come up here in the early 70s to become a vineyard manager.
Right on.
And so it had been kind of like starting to mulch around and it was starting to hit, but it was really ag and it wasn't big wineries yet. There was like the old school ones, Souverain, Italian Swiss Colony, which became Beringer. And so I ended up moving at that point and grew up in Dry Creek also. Grew up all throughout my district where I live now. And let's take an example, is Dry Creek in those days had 20 wineries and now it has 78.
Wow. And it's got its own association too, like to support those wineries and like, you know, the Dry Creek, it's got some name account.
Yeah, Dry Creek Wine Growers, Dry Creek Valley Association, citizens groups, and winery groups coming together trying to figure out what the future is. I think the real thing, if you look at where Healdsburg is now, where Dry Creek, where Cloverdale, where all these places are, and the sense I get in our community is that people are really nervous about what's next.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's beautiful. Like Healdsburg's awesome. Cloverdale is a little more quaint these days. Geyserville's grown in different ways. The wine country's out there. But I get this sense everywhere I go, and when I was running for office, I knocked on 40,000 doors, right?
Right.
You know, that people are saying, what's going to happen in 10 years? What's this place going to look like? Vacation rental by owners, so VRBO issues, housing issues, you know, drought and water, are we overdeveloped, how many winery events do we allow in areas, you know, rural development sprawl, and I think we're really at a pivot point where people are saying, pretty awesome, Sonoma County's on fire. Like everybody wants to be here, we want to be here who were born here, we want to come back, but at the same time, how do we keep that character? How do we keep what you and I have talked about even before we started the show, is that graininess, that authenticity of Sonoma County as we continue to develop? Well,
let me ask you, how do we? Because Healdsburg, as I'd seen it, it's fairly well transformed, and I really love what Healdsburg's become. But then, you know, I'm kind of part of that wave of people that townies might resent a bit, because I just call them townies, but also, you know, that's what we call ourselves in Petaluma. But like, you know, I came from, you know, Oakland in my case, and I kind of brought with me a wave of people that, you know, it's 40-something, you know, in my case I'm older than you, but, you know, kids and creative, you know, professional pursuits, that kind of thing. Are we changing the character of these small towns that we adore?
Yeah, absolutely we are.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the way I look at it is you just talked about it being a wave. I say ride the wave, don't fear it.
Yeah.
You know, things are changing. We don't control everything around us. We do have controls even in local government where I'm at as a supervisor. Land use, what gets developed, where it gets developed, how we transform hillsides into developments, or how we retain, you know, blue oak woodlands and other things like that, and how we retain the character and the setting. We have a lot of power over setting, but we don't have a lot of power over, you know, the culture and where it flows. And we shouldn't.
Yeah,
You know,
a
it's
great
not my
observation,
it's not my job to do that. But at the same point, I live by a simple philosophy for myself, which is fill up with the good instead of spitting out the bad.
Right.
So if I get frustrated about what's going on in my community, instead of fighting at it and kind of spitting it away, I try and inject something good into the system. So if you're worried about something culturally being wrong or a community kind of losing its mom and pop stores, then go promote it. We are at a local level enough where we can build whatever the hell we want. It's our own faults if we don't.
That's a great distinction there. If we love something, we should support it, and we should support it with our dollars, because it will go away. That's the only reason it would go away, is if it's not receiving what it needs to stay afloat. Yeah, and Petaluma, I've seen has changed quite a bit, and it's really two towns in one now. Is Healdsburg kind of split like that, or I mean, it seems everything radiates from the square there.
Yeah. Well, the plaza is its own world, right? It's a gleaming world. It's very high end. Things are expensive around the plaza. There's still a lot of there's killer food all over the place. There's people going around, but you know, when it comes into the weekend, but even during the week, it's a lot of tourism. But that's not bad. If you take a walk 2 blocks off the square, you got Healdsburg just as it was, you know, in many ways, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
It looks the same. The architecture's the same. It hasn't changed.
I mean, there's bigger things at play that some people worry about. The higher propensity of people owning second homes in a small area.
Right.
What the effect of that is on community rather than families and other things. The dispersion of certain family-driven structures away from maybe Healdsburg or some places and into Windsor, right? You know, and like communities forming and how that affects. But you know, a lot of this isn't defined according to a focused plan. A lot of it is market driven, and that's, I think, what it's my job as a county supervisor, and then people who are mayors and council members in local towns to do, is to make sure that the development that comes in the future fits community rather than takes it away from community.
Right. So speaking of like market driven stuff, tourism obviously is a big thing in Healdsburg and much of Sonoma County at this point. As I understand, I could be wrong now, there is a business improvement area, and taxes generated in that area in other parts of the county go to the Sonoma County Tourism, formerly Bureau, but I think it's just called Sonoma County Tourism now. And the transitory occupancy tax also goes into that fund. But Healdsburg doesn't contribute to that, nor does Sonoma.
Agreed.
And so, in large part because they don't have to. I mean, Healdsburg self-markets, and obviously it's like the gem of Sonoma County, right? So are you guys dependent on tourism? And what if that economy went away? Or are you being defined by the market that is tourism?
You know, it's interesting taking it away from Healdsburg and looking at, you know, my entire district or even the county at large. You now have tourism which is starting to splice into a lot of different areas, right? You have Cloverdale has its very own unique, beautiful, quaint. A lot of people say we want to self-define ourselves. We don't want to just become what a developer wants or other things like that. So you have these different flavors of tourism that goes around. On one respect, tourism is one of the lowest impact industries that you can have in an economy. Right? Like, so places, whether it's in Central America and Costa Rica and other places that have tourism-based cultures, they, you know, the impact on the environment is much less than heavy industry and other things. That it's also a very easy way for people to enter the workforce or build businesses.
Right.
Tourism, for you to do a property management company or for you to do, you know, an outfitting company or something else, walking tours. I see all these businesses that are created off of the back of tourism, and it doesn't require you to have a PhD in neuroscience to do it.
Right.
It requires initiative and opportunity and going forward. It's true entrepreneurialism. At the same time, my focus and my concern about tourism in Sonoma County is that the future of tourism has to be inreach, not outreach. It's not just going and saying, hey, everybody, come on in. We're just going to go destination market more. Instead, it's saying, are we dealing with the positive and the negative impacts of tourism success in Sonoma County?
Right.
Noise, VRBOs, events, traffic, right? You know,
that diminish the quality of life here.
Absolutely, and it's you know, you got to ride the line in between it, because some people moved here 2 years ago and they look at me and say, hey, you know, everything's going to hell. Right. And I say, what are you talking about? This is a pretty amazing place. That's why you moved here. You don't just shut the door after you get in.
Right.
But at the same point, there's a lot of good points that are brought up which are how do we sustainably set a vision for what is our future in Sonoma County. We have something called the general plan, which is land use. We have a lot of different programs that we put together with health action, our environmental stuff. We have all kinds of triple bottom line efforts, people, planet, prosperity. How do we promote healthy in all those? But at the same point, I really feel like it's time for us to get together and say, what's this place going to look like for our kids and our grandkids?
Let's find out when we come back. We're talking with James Gore. He's the 4th District Supervisor here in Sonoma County.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun, man. We'll be right back. We're back with James Gore. He's the 4th District Supervisor for the fine county of Sonoma. We were talking about where we left off, the future of Sonoma County and per the general plan and other stuff, but the dream future, what would it look like to you?
Been thinking a lot about this lately because you can use platitudes. You can say, okay, the key word I would use for what we need to have surrounding the future here in Sonoma County is health. Okay. Right? And so you have healthy communities, healthy economies, and you have healthy environment. So if you dive into each of those areas, you say, number one, what is a healthy community? Okay, sure, we talk about nutrition, we talk about diabetes, we have the ability to pull data and pull metrics together, education. How do we achieve what we want to go after in terms of not just health itself, but the social determinants of health is what it's called. Right. All the ecosystem that supports healthy people, right? Good paying jobs.
I was going to say wine.
Yeah. Glass a day, helps your heart, right. Phenolics. You look at, you go to our economy and you say, okay, how do you make sure that we continue to move in this burning in a good way, and you have that fire of tourism and other industry, and the fact that we have just over 3% unemployment? How do you have that be the kind of fire that molds things rather than burns out industries? We don't have the old extractive communities of the past, gravel mining, timber harvesting, all these other things. It has to be regenerative economies, right? And then you go to the third part, which you're talking about our environment, and this is something that I'm just key on. I have a lot of background in this, on linking agriculture and natural resource management together. And you say, how do you take something like our equivalent of a national treasure, our county treasure, the Russian River watershed, which is one of them, and you say, how do we not just say we're investing in river health, but say we're going to get in 15 years the Russian River removed from the impairments listing under the Clean Water Act through strategic investment, partnership approaches, leveraging resources, creating regulations where we need to, pulling away where we don't. Like, go get it. Like set a goal.
A specific goal.
Yeah. Groundwater.
You're right.
We need to achieve sustainability in our groundwater basins. We don't need to wait like the state law until 2042 to do it. For anybody, the rational thing to do is to have sustainable groundwater, so that the amount that goes in is more or equal to the amount being taken out. That's sustainable community.
So you served as a presidential appointee as Assistant Chief of the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service. First off, what is that? And second off, did you meet Obama?
Yeah, it's the funniest thing. I never met him. I never met Barry Obama.
He appointed you personally, though.
Well, it's funny because this world of presidential appointments, right? So if you go back further, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Yeah. Grew up here, was a Peace Corps volunteer in South America. Wow. I speak Spanish and Italian. I adventured, like trying to change the world at the same time. That's my public servant heart. Yeah. Went to D.C., broke as a joke, with my wife, who I met in the Peace Corps. She was a volunteer also. I had to go all the way to Bolivia to find a blonde Texan, I tell people. And so all of a sudden we're out in D.C. and we're rubbing nickels together, and she gets a job with the United Nations Foundation, and I got a job representing California ag and the wine industry on international affairs. So I was going all over the world doing trade issues and things. It was pretty fascinating. But when this guy got elected, Barack Obama, I was pretty inspired. Yeah. And I had to run a veritable campaign to get an appointment. Because most people who get appointed, they either worked on the campaign or they have coattails that they're riding in somewhere.
There's a previous association of some kind.
Yeah, something. And so I went hard and got a lot of support from our community, our natural resource community, others, congressmen and others out here. And I didn't know what I was doing, but when you have a goal, you can find a way to get there.
And you got it.
And I got it. And I was so proud to do that when I took the oath of office. It gives me the chills to even think about it when I did to this day. Now, flash forward and say, I had this amazing opportunity in administration to do a lot of good work. We led efforts in persistent poverty areas, this initiative called Strike Force. I saw the shadows of our country, Deep South, U.S.-Mexico border, Colonias region, tribal reservations around the country, which are almost seem like third world in our own country. Made me question why I went overseas into the Peace Corps to do that work when it's in my own backyard.
Yeah.
Right? So you go all of that forward and you start to find an interconnected web of how to healthy ecosystems lead to healthy economies, lead to healthy people, and you start to bind all these things together and you just say, God, you know, it's better to do it where you can get your hands into the dirt, like this for me at the local level, than sometimes in DC where it felt like pixie dust.
Right.
It's like, we're going to do 5 million there, we're going to do 2 million into that, and I didn't always see the tangible. What I do now is visceral. It's very personal.
Yeah.
When I make decisions, it affects your pocketbook as a resident, it affects John's property value,
Yeah.
it affects the family life. It's very visceral and personal. It's a totally different beast.
That responsibility, is it overwhelming sometimes?
Yeah, it is. It's really thick because it goes beyond red, white, and blue in the political sense, right? You know, it's like if something's going to be built next to your house, like a casino or something, I don't care what your affiliation is or whatever, it's going to impact your life, so you care. You got to look your neighbors back in the eyes. And then furthermore, there's a lot of people who aspirationally want us to be the model for the state and the nation, and that's what I want to do, but it takes time to get there.
Right.
You know, if you want to get things done, I always decided at a certain point in my life that I wasn't going to scream at the brick wall. I was going to knock my way through, and then I was going to start building, you know, and that takes work and time. So
That drive you've got, I mean, obviously you have a lot of personal fuel. Where do you get that? Where did that come from?
And I just, every time I talk to kids in school settings or other things that I do talks with, first question I ask is, how many of you still think you can change the world? And a lot of them raise their hands.
But not all of them.
Exactly, and I say all of you should be raising your hands, because I'm that kind of guy who, somebody told me that a long time ago.
Who was it?
My grandma and my mom. And you're gonna do something, you know, and we should, you know, I want to look at everybody and say, you're gonna do something. You're gonna do something special. So find your purpose, find your passion, go for it. I am known as a person who is enthusiastic and passionate about what I do. And that drives because I find purpose-driven work. Whenever I've worked in something that wasn't purposeful for me, that's when I start to attack myself. When I'm not, you know, I want to chew off my arm because I'm bored, because I'm turning a crank and just spitting out tchotchkes instead of having my hands in what's next.
And on that, we'll come back in 1 second. We're with James Gore, the 4th District Supervisor of Sonoma County. We'll be right back. We're back with James Gore, the 4th District Supervisor of Sonoma County. We're talking a little bit about your drive and your passion and what brought you out here, and before with the tchotchke machine got cranking. I'm curious, purpose-driven work and in finding what you found in it. Is that what made you run for supervisor, and what was that process?
You know, I tell people I didn't run for office to be a politician. Politician's a 4-letter word. You know, I ran to be, I say public servant leader, but get in the mix and go after it, and because it's an amazing place where you can get things done.
Yeah.
You know, I moved home, and I decided that it was enough time in D.C. I'd been gone in the Peace Corps. My wife and I spent 8 years in D.C. Every time I drove over the 14th Street Bridge, I thought about driving over Memorial Bridge, going over the Russian River.
Right.
And so we decided to come back out, and I started doing some consulting. I had good money coming in. I was working, but I wasn't in the field of battle, and that's part of the purpose-driven work. And so, amazing. You know, Mike McGuire, who was the supervisor in this position, who did a great job, decided to run for state senate. All of a sudden, it was like the only thing I would run for. It was like my home.
And it's such a, no city council, none of the usual steps, just right in. Yeah.
And we won by 20%.
Yeah, good for you.
You know, and I tell people a campaign is like a startup company on steroids. You know, I mean, you are just hammering all time. You're signs everywhere. You're knocking on doors. You're trying to inspire people. You're raising money. You're doing the things that sometimes you're working within the system that sets itself there. Other times you're like, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be different from it. I don't want to just ask for checks and give people remit envelopes and things. So how do you find your way to be authentic and unique within something that you also want to move forward and you want to be successful?
After 8 years in D.C., is there a path that's leading you back, do you think, politically?
No.
I mean, I have to ask.
So you do have to ask. I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in D.C. And I don't want to live in Sacramento.
So we're not thinking Congress, we're not thinking state assembly.
Let me put it this way too: is that I one time sat with a guy who was the Secretary of Ag, Tom Vilsack, and his staff, and one thing that he talked about was he'd been a governor, he'd been other things, and he said you got to ask yourself: Are you in public service? Are you an executive or a legislator? Does that fit your profile type? I'm more of an executive than a legislator. My goal in life is not to, and people do phenomenal work, and it's very important. But my goal in life is not to write the laws and write the rules and do other things. My job is to make sure government produces, that we form partnerships, we leverage dollars, that we get things done on the ground, that we improve our efficiency, our transparency, and a lot of that is done with just brass tacks. And I love it. So
if you weren't supervisor, what would you be doing to find that purpose that you found?
Something like the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Whether it's local or outside.
Sonoma Corps, we got to start that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. One thing we're setting up for later this year is we're going to do a headwaters to ocean trek on the Russian River.
Interesting.
We're going to take probably 7 to 10 days. We're going to go from the top of the watershed, photojournalists with people from natural resource, environment, agriculture, business, otherwise take a group of about 10. And we're going to go and see the as-is situation of all the river and the watershed as we go down and develop a plan for what's the 7-generation plan going forward into the future. What's the next 150 years entail? Like, I'd be doing that kind of adventurous, highlighting what we need to do, where we need to go. I love to get out, so I hate being in an office.
When you think 7 generations ahead, do you feel like obviously you can't realize the impact or see the impact that you will have. How do you motivate yourself to know that you are doing something that's going to kick in?
I believe that you have to own your own link in the chain.
Okay.
A lot of people complain about the integrity of the chain as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't working, or this isn't working, or there's too much law here, or Congress is broken, or whatever. And I just say, okay, that's fine, but own your link. And I have a link that I'm working on right now. And for me, it's an easy 10-year plan for me. I'm 38 years old. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. I live at home across the street from my brother. I'm doing awesome work. I could see myself doing this for a decade if God willing, and if people think I do a good job enough to reelect me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so that's to 48, then 48 to 58. We're just going to plan it all out today.
Let's go. Let's go save the world. Let's take what we've learned here.
Yeah.
Let's go do it. Let's go do it at a state level. Let's create the model for what is the future here in Sonoma County, and then let's go spread it around the state and around nationally.
Yeah, but the thinking is to stay in Sonoma County while you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we
after 10 years, I mean, am I ever going to run for office again? Maybe. But at that point, am I going to decide I don't want to and I love what I do? Maybe. I don't sit here and say I want to be a congressman or I want to do this. I want to get done what I do. I want to live this chapter. So 10 years is good enough for me right now.
No, I hear you. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but let's pretend that media lives forever, and that this document we're creating here is going to be dug up by some reporter 20, 30 years from now, right? What are you going to say to that future self that will remind you of this passion you've got now? You know what I mean? Because this is going to go out somewhere and it's going to live somewhere.
I would say, embody better every day. That is the relentless, imperfect pursuit of better. People who run around and ask for, silver bullets of policy or of trying to pre-design everything about our future, whatever. I want a goal, and I want to just pursue better every day, and I want everybody to do that in their own manner. That's where we get to a better future. And that's, to me, it encapsulates this kind of idea. People are fearful about climate change, or fearful of sea level rise, development coming into the area, losing our rural character, whatever. And I kind of want to look back at everybody and say, let's own our future. Let's own it. Let's own it.
I think you should thank your future self.
Yeah.
This is a really, I love this conversation in large part because I do feel like you're a person who's writing history, you know, in the present. Mm-hmm. Looking back, what would you have changed?
What I'd change is I'd change the old paradigms that are built on the past that don't have relevance for the now. Let me be very specific.
Okay.
When I was running for office, and there's campaigns that are going on now, people are still caught in this environment versus ag versus business versus union. That's BS. Mm-hmm. It's crap. I am so tired of it. It's like however you designate it, I'm probably a Gen Xer, you know, a young Gen Xer. You know, with us or millennials or whoever, it's like if there's a problem, let's fix it. I just have I care enough about the past to as prelude for context. But the people who come up to me and talk to me about, you know, the environmental battles of the 70s and why I shouldn't trust somebody now because of that, I just say, I'm sorry, but if I trusted all of you, I wouldn't trust any of you because you all talk smack about each other. So I just choose to say, what can I build that brings us together? And I'm going to relentlessly pursue that. And we've already done it in a lot of ways.
On that note, sir, James Gore, 4th District Supervisor of Sonoma County, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, come back,
Awesome.
all right?
Yeah, I would love to.
Good time, yeah.